I was taking a walk when he sent us all an email. So if I don't sound too prepared, it's because I'm not, but I'll keep on struggling. First of all, we start out with public testimony on the agenda. And does anybody have any comments? If so, speak up. I don't know if you're raising your hand or not.
Pat, you want to go first or you want me to go?
You can go, whatever, I'll fill in.
I think that's probably a good
Okay,
idea.
Kamiley.
Okay, aloha everyone. Kamiley Maldonado, Office of Hawaiian Affairs. I also received a frantic message. Kat and I received frantic messages from Mark this morning asking for an update for the commission on the status of some of the legislative bills that you guys are watching. And so I just threw something together really fast. I actually just made a spreadsheet that kind of has the bills that you guys might be interested in. So I'm gonna forward that to you after this because I didn't have time to like make sure that it's all correct and send it before the meeting. But that will have more information about other bills that you might just be interested in taking a look at and maybe commenting on this session. There's some weird stuff in the session this year. So, you know, I definitely recommend taking a look at that, but I'm just gonna highlight a few of the most important ones that the commission has already engaged in. And the first one is related to the pretrial measure that the commission put forth in its annual report, its first annual report. And that was, they got introduced as HB 1111 and SB 1260. The House bill side is appears to be dead at this point. Unfortunately, that might have been a little bit due to an oversight on my part, so I apologize for that. But the Senate side is still alive because it only has a single referral, and I have a meeting with Chair Rhodes this afternoon on something unrelated, so I'm going to bring it up and see if we can get a hearing for that one. There were two other, or a kind of a handful of other pretrial measures that looked substantially similar, very, very similar to the recommendation of the task force. So I'll talk about those a little bit right now. HB 1079 would have done the exact same thing, plus it would have added a penal code review. However, that one looks like it's dead. But SB 1244, which was the companion of that one, is still alive on the Senate side. However, the Public Safety Committee recently, yeah, you saw that, Kat. The Public Safety Committee recently put up the new draft, and it looks like they just deleted everything that was critically necessary for the pretrial process to be done a little bit more tightly, efficiently, and less reliant on cash bail. And I'm not really, so they kept a pretrial portion in there, but to be honest with you, you might have to look at it with Judge Ibarra and kind of like dig through it a little bit, because to me, I just cannot tell what it does now. If it does anything different from what the law currently does, other than actually make it just slightly more harsh. And so we can definitely like dig a little bit more into that later if you want to, but the penal code review kind of component is still present in that one, and that one is still alive. So I'm thinking maybe either between the SB 1260, which is the commission's bill, or SB 1244, maybe the commission might want to weigh in on both of those moving forward and really push for the language that was originally recommended to be put back in whichever of those vehicles kind of keeps moving. And then there are a few more that I wanted to talk with you about, two that mention the commission. Well, one specifically is an appropriation for the oversight coordinator, which, you know, you talked a lot about in your report. And then, as you know, the representatives and the senators were pretty concerned about the information that you brought to them. So they introduced a measure to create an appropriation. One is HB 1110, and that's the one that I believe is still moving. I think there was a Senate companion, but it died. But HB 1110 is still moving, and it was referred, oh no, it was referred to JHA, and that was the second one. Let me look at the Senate one. Hold on one second. I thought I had organized these. Kat, I might come back to this one, or maybe you could let me know if, because I think, I'm not sure if I have my cells mixed up, but I think that one might be dead.
Yes, it is. 1110 is dead.
Yeah.
The only two commission bills that actually made it were HB 1080, which is about phasing out private prisons,
Mhm.
and SB 1243, which is its companion. Those are the only two alive, and how they dealt with it was they said, oh, we'll let the commission decide. So they pushed off the whole phase out thing to the commission while they're not funding you. So it's really frustrating because we haven't been able to move any of the good bills that the commission was interested in.
Yeah, and there are actually a handful of bills that kind of do similar things to that. The moratorium, the phase out of private prisons, and all kind of tying in the commission in some ways. So in my spreadsheet, I highlighted those in blue because a lot of them specifically and directly mention the commission as having kuleana in that process. So you definitely want to take a look at those and see, you know, if you like it, if so, how you would want to weigh in which language you like best and how you want to move forward with that. And then the last thing are the bills that would move commission administratively to DHS, and those are
Dead.
both of them. I thought one was moving. Oh, actually, yeah, it died.
1380. Yeah.
That one is dead. That one is dead. Okay, great. So yeah, that's it. That's all I have for you guys, and then I'll get this sent to you by the end of this meeting.
So Mark asked me to give kind of an overview, and there seems to be tension between the House and the Senate. The Senate, Senator Dela Cruz put in a bill requiring public safety to build a new OCCC. And the feeling has been the bills that are moving are cannabis, the stadium. We haven't gotten much traction on public safety, and where we've talked about public safety, it's like, oh, let the commission do it. And yet we keep saying, but the commission has no funding and no staff, and they're all volunteers. And we just have not been able to get traction on that. And they're using there's no money. So it's been a difficult session because of everything is on Zoom, which has been really weird. So when they're doing decision-making or when people testify and stand on their testimony, nobody knows, well, what was their testimony? Some committees are really good and they do say, but some judiciary does not in the House. And they have loads of bills. So that's been kind of problematic because you're constantly going back to the website to see what's actually happening. So it's just been kind of a challenge this year. And I would hope that the commission would talk to the people who appointed you to say, you know, you're giving us all these responsibilities. We need help. Thank you.
Thank you. Kamali, when you forward the spreadsheet, I'm going to ask Lisa to put it on the website so that everybody has access to it, because we discussed it and it should be available to everyone. Any other public comments? Okay, let's move into the agenda. Juggling devices because I'm not very talented. So I have the agenda on my phone. Oh, yes.
Could I make a comment on something that's on the agenda?
Yes, certainly.
I just wanted to say, and I'll say it very briefly, that I was really, really disturbed about what was on the news this week about an inmate who was due for release. And instead of releasing him, they left him in Halava. He got COVID-19. He was sent to Palimomi, according to the report on the news, and he was there for 3 weeks with his family, was not notified. They were finally notified and he died. And I just don't understand how that can possibly happen in our system. And it just is appalling to me that, number one, why wasn't he released? I thought we had assurances from the parole board that they were going to look through all of these inmates who were very close to being released. This guy died at this contracted COVID right at the time that he was supposed to be released, within a week or two. So why wasn't he out if that review had really been made to reduce the number of people in Halava because of COVID? He should have been released long before he caught the disease. And why wasn't his family notified for 3 weeks? I don't think HIPAA should be an issue, but if it was, I don't know why the problem hasn't been addressed, because HIPAA can be waived. I do a lot of compassionate release cases. The first thing I do with every inmate is get them to waive their HIPAA protection so that I can talk to their doctors and review their records. So it should be standard protocol when they're admitted to the facility, to give them a waiver and say, if you want us to notify your family about your medical condition under any circumstances, or that you get hospitalized, just sign the waiver. It's part of your file and we won't have a problem. That should have been done years ago and should have been part of also signing an advanced care directive. So I hope that you will look into how can this possibly happen. And I do want to mention that Justice Wilson, in a dissent that was on the COVID-19 cases that was issued minutes ago, footnote 6 talks about Hawaii Revised Statute 353C-8.5 and questions why the mortality reviews haven't been made and or haven't been publicized. So I think this is a huge issue that involves, it's just so emblematic of the problems that we're having in the system, where we just treat inmates like they are non-humans, and this has got to stop. I can't imagine why a family member can't be notified. And it's not the first time. Kat and I have both had other incidents where family members contacted us. And I can tell you from my own personal experience, about 2 years ago, or it might have been 3 years ago, an inmate committed suicide, and I got a call from his family because they couldn't find the body. They were in Albany, New York. He was African-American. They had been notified of his death and no information as to where they could find or claim his body. And this process just continues of this total disregard for the humanity of the people who are incarcerated. And it is really time to stop. And I hope the Oversight Commission will really dig into this and issue a report on it, and with recommendations on how we can stop this terrible disregard for the humanity of the people who are incarcerated and their families. Thank you.
Bob, I have one question. When you talked about that the inmate might be able to sign a HIPAA waiver upon entering the facility, that would be qualified, right? Just for his family? It wouldn't
He could say, I want you can talk to my brother, sister, whoever he wants, and then he's protected from every other unauthorized disclosure.
Okay.
Martha, can I ask Bob a question?
Of course.
Bob, you and I have discussed this a little bit. You sent me something out of Nevada. Apparently many states and the feds have what I call fatality reviews, morbidity, mortality conferences to learn from the unfortunate and sometimes tragic death of someone. Is it your position, maybe I'm asking a rhetorical question, that certainly public safety and parole, and certainly this commission should make this a line item and jump on with best practices?
Yeah, I mean, I absolutely. And it ought to be an administrative rule. You could draft it and craft it and pass it in 90 days and just make it part of the force and effective law that when somebody dies, you do that review. Hospitals do it. And any smart organization that has goals and sees things going wrong, the military does it. They have after action reports. What went wrong? In some cases, maybe nothing went wrong. That's fine. But you need to take a look at all of those cases where you've got somebody dying in the facility or in a hospital because the facility put them in the hospital. And it just should be routine. And that's the only way you're going to improve your system and identify mistakes. It's got to be done.
Okay, well, we're
Martha,
gonna
can
get
I?
to that later, but let me finish. We're going to get to that later, but I don't think we need a statute. We just need a best
No.
practice. I don't think Hawaii loves to hide behind, unfortunately, I don't mean this personally, confidentiality and this and that and the other thing, but I am very much into transparency and accountability where merited. So we'll get to that later in the agenda.
Yeah. No, Mike, I wasn't suggesting that we have a statute. I was suggesting either an administrative rule or just draft a policy and publish it. Either one.
Okay,
Yeah.
Kat, you want to make a comment?
Well, I just wanted to say that there's a bill at the legislature that's still alive called HB 796, and it is about death reporting, because this has been a huge, huge issue for many years. And in 2019, the legislature passed Act 234. And after that law was passed, for the first 6 months, actually reports came in. They were redacted and kind of useless, but they were coming in. And then apparently the department was told that they had to stop doing that, sharing the reports with the legislature. So there's a bill that's happening now.
Martha, I have a question for Bob.
Yes.
Sure.
Hey, Bob, this is Ronnie Barra.
Hi, Judge.
You mentioned, and I pulled up the dissenting opinion of Justice Wilson, footnote 6, and you kind of read it, and it's statute, as you said, 353C-8.5, and they talk about reporting within 30 days, a formal report of the clinical mortality review. And it also says here, did you look that the Hawaii Correctional System Oversight Commission could also investigate the inmate deaths at
Right.
HCF? And they cite, Justice Wilson cites 353L-3. Did you look at that? I didn't, this is the first time I've seen it, so I haven't. And the reason I ask is what substantively can we do?
The opinion came out, it's file stamped at 8:16 this morning. So as soon as I got it, Judge, I sent it, I looked at that footnote and I sent it off to you and Judge Town, and I did not have a chance to look at that other statute that he references. I'm sorry.
So maybe we don't know what kind of authority we have at this point.
Well, I don't know what he cited, but I think if you look at the statute that created the Oversight Commission, you have such broad the authority that you can investigate virtually anything you want. So I would think even without the statute that Justice Wilson references, that you have that inherent authority to look into those matters.
Okay, now following up on that, if we have the authority, would there be any confidentiality provision in any law that would prohibit the commission from going into the circumstances of the death?
That's what an investigation, that's what a research would follow up with.
Well,
I'm concerned with getting into a very general conversation up here, and we do have a section in the agenda. I'm looking for it right now about the death reports, and perhaps we can go more into.
Oh,
this.
I'd be happy to do that. And it'll give me a chance to think of how to respond to Judge Ibarra's question, because
Okay, so-
honestly, it's a good question. It's a very good
We
question.
also have a request from Carrie Ann that she would like to testify. Carrie Ann?
Excuse me, Martha.
Yes.
One last question for Bob. Bob, what case are you referring to? Judge Wilson's dissent? What case was that?
It's a dissent to the COVID-19 cases as a group.
Oh, okay,
um,
okay. It's not a,
And if I could forward it to you without losing this, I'm afraid of getting disconnected.
oh, no.
I tried to send it, but I'll send it right after the meeting to you.
Okay,
Thank
And
you.
we will continue this discussion when we get into the agenda. So Carrie Ann?
Good morning, Commissioners. Marianne Shirota for the record. I'm sorry, I came in late, so I missed some of the discussions prior to, but I did want to comment on the agenda today. First, relating to the update on COVID-19 infections and deaths at both Saguaro and all of our facilities. I just want to echo comments from Kat as well as Bob. It is egregious that some of these deaths, we still don't have accurate information, and that the fact that the families were not notified in a timely manner. And just to kind of go back several years, the Senate committee some years ago under Senate Nishihara held a joint informational briefing, I believe, relating to suicides within the facilities. And at the time, there was all of this information requested from the Department of Public Safety to be provided to the Senate. And my recollection is that either the documents were not provided, or there was a delay, or it was provided in such a manner that so much information was redacted, it was of no benefit to the Senate Joint Committee. And so we see this pattern and practice happening year after year, and it's just disturbing. As Bob has pointed out, if you look at the enabling statute for the Oversight Commission, it says investigations. It's very broad. The discretion is large. I mean, the deaths in these facilities, to me, fall squarely within the purview of the Oversight Commission. And even if it means subpoenaing information from the department, if that needs to be done, or working in tandem with the Senate, they have the power to subpoena the records, subpoena witnesses. That might be the way to approach it, since the Oversight Commission doesn't have staff at this time, but maybe to partner with them to obtain the information that's needed. Second, I want to add that I have strong concerns about the gaps that are happening in the community within parole, where people are granted parole and they're chair to set and they're not being released. I don't want to go into specific details of particular clients that I've recently represented for obvious reasons, but I can say in general that people are waiting. They're given chair to set, they've had housing verified, employment, they've completed programming, and there's still all of these delays. And in one particular case, a client of mine contracted COVID while waiting when he potentially could have been released. And so this is harm that is happening to people. And this person has underlying medical conditions, has been sick. And, it could have, for some people, it could lead to death. And so we really need to hone in, I think, and look at parole. What are they doing in terms of best practices to expedite the release of individuals who are granted parole, or even early release for individuals who are eligible for that? That would decrease the population and help with mitigation efforts on a larger scale. The other item relates to OCCC. I haven't been able to keep up this week with the moratorium bill. I don't know, probably Kat could speak. I think it may have died from what I understand, sadly so. But I want to bring this to the committee's attention because it shows what's happening behind the scenes. Here we have the Oversight Commission, which is tasked with the responsibility to provide comments on building new jails, prisons, setting capacities, reentry. The commission testified in support of a moratorium bill. You have the community, the vast majority of people submitted in support of the bill. We know of people who are placing numerous phone calls to the next committees to hold hearings on the bill for further discussion. And after one committee meeting, it is killed. On the Senate side, I believe it was not even heard for a first hearing. So I suspect that we have people on this particular virtual meeting today, the people who are representing the planners, the people who are making money, the consultants, they likely are doing work behind the scenes that are not in the best interest of the community. They're pushing for this jail at all costs. And we keep hearing the mantra of the legislature, we don't have money. We don't have money to support and fund the Oversight Commission. Well, placing a moratorium is going to save money. But we're okay with spending money on consultants for a new jail and for more incarceration. But we're not okay with placing a moratorium to pause all these consultants getting paid. So we just have to be really aware of the political reality. But I am encouraged at the legislature, the Oversight Commission, it seems like the legislature were wanting to hear from all of you. So to the extent that you are able to testify and represent the commission, we need to keep educating them the importance of your work and that you need to be fully funded. And I don't know, again, do you know if the Oversight Commission bill for full funding has made it out of the last committee? It didn't either.
They died. They
Okay.
died.
And see, that's what I mean. There are people who are rallying on all of these fronts. And it just goes to show the money, who's benefiting from it, and who is connected to all the people that are making money and tied to the capital. Because this is unacceptable, it's not serving our community's needs. Let's see if there was one other thing on the agenda. I think that was about it. Maybe when you have further discussion that I'll chime in. Thank you so much for the opportunity to testify.
Thank you, Carrie. Bob, you
I have a
raised your
question.
hand again. Oh, Ted, I'm sorry. Go ahead.
Yeah, Carrie Ann, you said that on the cases you mentioned regarding chair to set, that you said that the individuals had housing and employment and they still weren't released. What's your understanding of why they weren't released more promptly?
One person is awaiting because of they're in Saguaro, and as you know, all of the delays with COVID. But even still, what globally, this was some months ago, there were a number of individuals who received parole, granted parole, but they couldn't complete their programming. They were further delayed because of COVID. So this pushed people back literally months. Right? Because here some people needed just a few more weeks of classes, they would have graduated. But you have one COVID outbreak, quarantine, which extended for over a month or 2 months, and then classes didn't resume. At the time, I as well as other people were advocating for alternatives, allowing people to do their workbook, their RDAP, or other programs in their module, because there are workbooks that they could have done it in their module. They were not permitted to do so. And so I think this type of thinking where it's like we have to deliver programs only in this way, we can't do anything else, is just flawed thinking. Because we even know in the elementary school, my son, to draw on a perfect example, is in the 3rd grade and has learned to adapt to distance learning, having to do things from home. The world is changing, and HP and others need to have more flexibility for how these services, programs are delivered, because COVID is not going away at any given time. There may be other outbreaks in the future. So how can we deliver services so that people can complete it in a timely fashion to move people out of the system as quickly as possible? The other individual, I can tell you, is going to be transferred to Maui. And there's this gap where Maui's waiting to hear from Oahu, the staff member's out. So I've tried to speak with other staff members and still waiting several weeks on end. But it's these types of gaps. And I've heard some other attorneys that they're facing similar challenges as well.
Thank you. I just wanted to mention that one of the concerns we had with the new OCCC is not only with the 1,044 beds for pretrial detainees, but also was it 288 beds for pre-release? You know, why they need that when they aren't using the beds that are available right now? If, in fact, if you look at the numbers, even Halawa is under its operating capacity. So if you transfer some inmates from Arizona back to Halawa, Waiawa, and Kulani, there'd be ample money to fund the commission and other kinds of programming opportunities, such as I know that there are applications which can connect the Arizona inmates to classes in Hawaii, and
Yes.
and you know, full disclosure, I'm on the advisory board of one such company, which is a public benefit company. But I think the department really needs to start looking at these things and taking advantage of these things. You don't need any kind of fancy hookups.
Yes, you don't. And I want to add this, because to just add on to your point, Commissioner Sakai, is that study for the MOCCC, the projections, the number of anticipated beds that were needed, that data is outdated and flawed from the get-go. We need to find out who did that. Are they really qualified to do the projected analysis? But we know that it is inaccurate. And since we have on Ms. Bettina Minhart on this call, again, I've been asking this question. I think that we really need to ask at a public meeting. I believe it was IAEA Neighborhood Board. She had stated in the record that they were going to be doing another study for the projected beds. And from my understanding, first of all, we don't know. The commission should know if this other study was done, and if so, to receive a copy so we can review it and vet it, and still question, why are they still pushing forward for that amount of beds when there is this decrease in population? And we know with COVID and working together collaboratively, we can continue to reduce the population through best practices. It's very clear. It's very clear that there's this intentional pushing for this one project at all costs to the detriment of our community. So thank you for raising those questions.
Okay, Bob, you had raised your hand again.
Martha, I'm sorry. If we're going to stay on I just have one more remark on the COVID and death. Is this an appropriate time, or should I hold it off?
Why don't we hold off until we get into the agenda, because we spent the first half hour on these comments. I appreciate all of them, and your frustration that the frustrations are being expressed, I believe I can say universally, are felt by those of us on the commission. And it's very disheartening what's happening. So the first thing on our agenda, again, is discussing the bills, and we appreciate that both Kat and Kamali gave us an update on many of those bills, and we'll be relying on you again in the future. Should we have to? I'm sorry that we as commissioners have perhaps not been as involved as we should have been. And that's one of the things that I want to talk to the commissioners about, and that is monitoring the bills. The bills that impact us, instead of just having it all relying on Mark, I think we should be looking at each of us accepting the responsibility for monitoring certain types of bills, something along those lines. Do any of the commissioners have comments on that? No, okay. And another thing that Mark brought up, like he had asked me to testify on the funding bill for the commission, and I am registered on the website, and it was discovered if I was not the one who submitted the testimony, I was not able to testify. And so in the future, we will ensure that individual members that will be testifying will be registered, and they will be the ones submitting the legislature. Not having contact with the legislature, not seeing them face to face, I think, as Kat has brought up and others have brought up, really hinders our ability to advocate the positions of the commission and to make ourselves really known that we are doing work with them. Have any of the commission members had direct contact with legislators during the session besides Mark?
Martha, I did submit testimony on the Senate bill that Kamala,
Yes.
that's 12 on the Senate bill. And I guess basically I said the commission supported that.
Yeah.
But that's all I have. But I didn't testify. I just submitted testimony because I finally worked it out. I missed submitting the deadline by probably about a couple of minutes, where you need at least 24 hours to testify. But I think I was trying to figure out how to register and finally got it through with Mark's staff. And they said I was too late to actually testify, but they got my written testimony.
Yeah, and Martha, I did have a meeting with Representative Ganadin a few weeks ago, and I believe I briefed the commission members on the meeting through email.
Yes, you did. Thank you. And Mark and I also had a meeting with Ganadin and Ono, the two of them together previously. In the notes that Mark gave me, one of the things he states is there's a strong sense that legislative politics are moving away from the reform of the criminal justice system. And that seems to be very, very obvious from the actions that have been taken so far. And this is where I think that we're the weakest. We're being hindered in our ability to make our presence known and visit legislators, not just during a hearing, but actually walking the halls of the Capitol and visiting them. And it's very discouraging, very, very discouraging. Are there other comments on the bills at this point? I'm having trouble keeping up with all my devices. Okay, let's go up to the update on COVID-19 infections and deaths at the facilities. And is Max available? Max Otani?
I'm here.
Hi, Max.
Hey, Mark.
And Mark in his notes said that you were going to give us some numbers on this.
Yeah, okay.
Thank
So at the present time, we have 18 active cases, COVID active cases at MCCC. We have all other facilities presently are cleared, including Saguaro. On the staff side, we have 2 active cases at OCCC and 5 active cases at HCF. As far as situations involving death, departments reporting a total of 6 deaths, COVID-related deaths at Halava and 2 at Saguaro.
Okay, Max, I do want to follow up with a question that Bob was talking to us about, and that was the inmate who died at Palimomi. And was his family notified that he was hospitalized?
Yes, the family was notified. Let me just say that the family is not notified immediately upon admission to the hospital. Okay, because we have numerous admissions daily. Yesterday, we had 2 admissions into the hospital due to assaults. So the family is not notified when the person goes into the hospital. I think the family is notified, and Tommy, correct me if I'm wrong. Tommy Johnson is also here. But family are usually notified if the inmate's condition takes a turn for the worse. And at that point, either a personal visit or virtual visit is offered at that time.
And why is a family not notified that someone is admitted to the hospital? I certainly understand that they just go to the emergency room, you're not notifying them, but actually admitted to a hospital.
A lot of times it's security reasons, and the person, and it's unknown how long the person would be there. But as I said, notification is usually made when the conditions begin to deteriorate.
So it's just for security reasons that families are not notified.
I believe so.
Well, the other thing too, Martha, this is Tommy. The other thing, if the inmate asks us to notify the family specifically, then we can do that and try to set up the visitations. But again, if the inmates don't authorize us to release that information, we're not going to be able to release it.
So are we affirmative, and do we ask the inmate, would you like your family to be notified?
In most cases, I think they do, but I'm not going to sit here and say that sometimes it doesn't slip through the cracks. Because sometimes when inmates go to the hospital, they may go in for a same-day procedure, or they may go in for an operation where they stay 1 or 2 days, and if we ask them, they may say no. Either way, unless they tell us that they want us to notify them, we're just not going to be able to do it unless their condition turns for the worse. So I can go back and check to make sure that we are giving that to every inmate that goes in the hospital for an overnight stay.
I would ask that you do that, and you let us know whether in fact that they are constantly being notified or being told that they or requested if they want to notify their family.
I can do that. I think we can make it part of the checklist. With this other case mentioned earlier, the family was notified that the inmate was in the hospital. It was the daughter that was notified and not the sister, because the daughter was the next of kin.
Martha, one of the people on this call, the participants, disagrees with that, says they don't. So let's just put that in the record. And I thank that participant.
Martha, can I ask Max a question? It's not, see,
Of
something he
course.
said sparks my curiosity. He said that there are 2 inmates in a hospital because of assaults.
Well, they were taken to the emergency room for fighting, and they required medical treatment, brought back to the facility.
Oh, okay. They weren't admitted to the hospital
No.
itself. Okay.
A lot of times, being admitted to the hospital, I guess the definition needs to be clear.
They were treated at the hospital, but not
They're treated at the
admitted.
hospital and brought back.
Okay.
And what I was referring to also was admissions to the hospital as opposed to emergency room visits. Bob, you wanted to make another comment, I believe, about the deaths?
Well, yeah, and in response to what Max said, I mean, isn't COVID, when somebody gets a fatal disease, a disease that has killed 500,000 people in our country, you'd think that would be a turn for the worse, and that immediately upon entry to the hospital, that the family would be notified of that. And I just, that should just be routine. And secondly, I think if an autopsy is done, I just want to point out, which is not always the case, but frequently the case, that an autopsy report is available to the public. Anybody can get it. It has the cause of death. It has the circumstances surrounding death. It has an investigation of the death. And anybody can get that for anybody who has an autopsy done by the city and county of Honolulu by paying $5 as soon as the autopsy is completed. So I think in view of that, there wouldn't be very many obstacles to the Oversight Commission looking into deaths, much as the coroner does. And if there is any question about it and you can't get it resolved quickly in favor of disclosure and in favor of using that information in a constructive way, then file a DEC action and go to court and get a ruling that you can do it instead of just assuming that you can't. Be proactive on getting the transparency that we need in this system. Those would be my comments. Thank you.
Martha,
Yes.
Can we ask Max what the department's position on 796, the death reporting bill is, so he could report on that to everyone?
Okay, Max, this has been brought up in the legislature and been brought up in the media about the death reports. What is the department's position on releasing this information?
Our initial position on the bill was that we opposed the bill because it didn't address language that, would cover us under HIPAA and state constitution. In my most recent discussion with our Attorney General's office, personally, I don't think the bill is that bad now. So the House Committee asked us, Judiciary House Committee asked us for, possible language for the bill to be amended, and we provided that yesterday. But not all of the language was included in the new House Draft 2. So I think, my position and, the department's position is that if the laws allow us to release, we'll release the information. So, we're just looking to see if that House bill can be amended to such that gives us the authority to release the information.
Okay. I think it's going to be very important. It was brought up earlier, and this has been brought up consistently as we've been meeting, that the commission has authority to do investigations. The commission has a lot of authority. I really think that we as a commission, we need clarification in that, because in the bill or in the law, it keeps on referring to the secretary, the executive director is the one with the authority. And I've never asked for an opinion from the AG. Does anything that's assigned to the executive director apply to us as commissioners too, that we have those same authorities? But certainly we have the authority as a commission to at least do the study to come up with best practices for recommendation to the administration and to the legislature. And I would ask that we consider doing that. No more than that. But anyway, as we move forward, there any more comments on this from the commissioners? If members, I'm sorry, if those who are participating have comments, please put them into the chat box and we will follow up. We got to keep this to the commissioners. Otherwise, this meeting is just really dragging out very long. Okay. Thank you. Let me get back to the agenda.
Martha, you wanted updates on the vaccine process?
Oh, yes, please.
Let's start with Saguaro Correctional Center. Tentatively, they plan to begin vaccination February 22nd. They plan to start with 65 years and older, and they'll progress through as the Arizona Health Department directs. Plan to use Moderna. There are 48 inmates that are 65 and older at this point at Saguaro. And there's 139 that are between the ages of 55 and 64.
Mhm.
Our Hawaii facilities, we offered vaccine approximately a month ago at Halava and OCCC to inmates that were 75 and older. These are kind of in line with the community standards right now. The second dose of that vaccine is being offered today and tomorrow at those same facilities. We're working with Department of Health on progressing to the 65 and older category at this time. Projected date of the rollout is early March. And I guess, a lot of times this would be contingent upon the supply of vaccine that we receive. Statewide in Hawaii, we got like 97 inmates that are 65 and older, 330 plus inmates that are between 55 and 64. We're working with DOH and the counties to bring vaccine to the neighbor island facilities also. I believe KCCC may have been the only neighbor island facility that has started the vaccination process on inmates. Right now, as far as staffing, out of 2,300 staff, 700 plus, so approximately 1/3 of the staff received at least the first dose of the vaccine at this point.
Max, do you have staff declining to accept the vaccine?
Yes, we do. We have inmates also declining.
Do you know the rate of the decline? Is it significant?
I think the numbers that I got from Halava when it was initially offered last month was about half of the inmates 75 and older who said no.
Okay. Are you folks keeping track of those stats? I would
We're-
presume Health would have them.
Health would have it, but it's not, I don't have the stats with me today, but I believe Health has it.
Yeah. We're aware
far
this
as-
is happening throughout the
Yeah.
United States.
As far as the staff testing, we don't really keep thorough stats on the staff testing because they can go on their own because it's a voluntary thing. So we kind of rely on Department of Health, but then they wouldn't know that they're an employee of the Department of Public Safety.
Max, how about inmates with pre-existing conditions who are below the age of 65?
Yeah, we haven't gotten to that yet, but that's a consideration that we ask Department of Health to take a look at.
Because they're in the Department of Health scheme, they're considered 1C.
Right,
Anybody with a pre-existing condition.
right.
As a matter of fact, this is my opinion, and but I believe anybody who is incarcerated should be given a high priority because of the nature of the living conditions and the inability to separate. So anyway, but I would urge that you folks really push at least for any inmate with any kind of pre-existing condition to be vaccinated as soon as possible.
Right. I don't disagree with you, Ted. But a lot of it right now depends on the supply.
Yeah, we understood.
So even the vaccination process that's going on this week at Halava and OCCC, it's only the second dose. They cannot offer any more first dose at this point.
And that's a statewide problem is supply. Just in the news this week because of weather on the mainland, they
It's
didn't.
it's a nationwide problem at this point.
Yeah.
I think Tommy wanted to say something.
If I could just add to a couple of things. One, providing the supplies come in, the inmates in Maui will begin to be vaccinated next week by the Department of Health. In the last meeting, we discussed for us to go to the Department of Health and see if they would agree to consider inmates age 55 and above because of the lifestyle the inmates lead and because of pre-existing health conditions. In talking to the Department of Health, they agreed to that, providing the doses are there. So what they agreed to do was when they go to the facilities to vaccinate inmates 65 and above, if they have extra vaccine and inmates who are not 65 yet are willing to get vaccinated, they'll vaccinate them on the spot. So we're trying to work with them as much as we can. There was a hiccup with the vaccinations nationwide, but I think once they get back on track, then we'll be able to get back to the Department of Health and start working with those high-risk groups that are not 65 years old in earnest.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, Martha, I have a question for Max.
Yes.
Okay, Max, following the state guidelines, the Department of Health guidelines about the vaccination pertaining to tier 1A and 1B, is public safety in compliance, meaning all 74 and above have been vaccinated already in the whole state,
I cannot say that they've all been vaccinated, but they've been offered the vaccination.
Okay.
Okay, not at the facilities because we haven't reached certain facilities yet. Inmates at the facilities.
So
But
that was my question. Which facilities that you folks offered the vaccine in compliance with this, in following the state guidelines that have not yet been done?
It was Halawa, Waiawa, and OCCC and women's.
4 facilities on.
And do you know approximately how many people that would involve? I understand they can be offered and they can refuse, but how many we're talking about?
We do have the age information here. Max relayed that earlier about the number of inmates, the ages statewide. So you're looking at that number. Some have accepted the vaccine and some have refused.
Yeah, my question was, yes, they have the position they can refuse, but my question is, given the age of 74 and above in the state, you're saying that there's some facilities were not offered and given the opportunity to refuse. And my question to that is, how many do you have that have not been offered in the whole state, in other facilities besides OCCC?
Judge, I believe right now, Kulani and HCCC may be the only facilities that have not been offered to the inmates at this point. Because I know from Department of Health, they were saying that the vaccine was offered at KCCC.
Okay, but you folks are offering the second shot now to those that have been offered the first shot without offering the first shot in HCCC.
But Judge, that's not our call. DOH is putting the priority on the second shots versus people getting the first shots. So those people that are now being scheduled to get the second shot is DOH's call to exclude folks for the first shot at this point. I hope that answers your question.
And that is happening nationwide also, that if there's too long a delay between the first and second shot, it is less effective. So many jurisdictions making the decision, what you have available, keep on schedule for the second shot and then start, and do the first shots as more becomes available.
Correct.
Judge, we are working on HCCC and Kulani, as part of the rollout plan for next month, early next month.
Okay.
Judge Ibarra, I have a
Yeah.
question. Has the vaccine been offered to the Big Island residents in general?
Yes. Oh,
Okay.
yes.
So why haven't the correctional facilities, the residents in the correctional facilities been offered? I would like to think that they would be among the first to be offered. So anyway, it's more a comment than a question, I guess.
Yeah.
So I kind of get the drift of where you're trying to go.
Okay, any other comments or questions from the commissioners? Okay, Max, we're going to move on to the next item on the agenda, which is the update on the planning for OCCC. And I understand that we do have some folks here who are from the consultants and I believe DAGs. Is that correct?
Yes, that's correct. And they'll be doing a presentation for you.
Yeah, so you know, I understand the PSD has released an RFI, and I think that's primarily quite well. Let's just get started in the discussion. Can you introduce us to the consultants?
Okay. Bernina is there. She's our consultant. I'm not sure who's there from DAGS, but I think, you know, they'll be presenting information today, and they have a short presentation for you.
Yes, so that would be me. Good morning, commissioners and community. My name is Bettina Maynard. I am with AHL, that is Architects Hawaii in a prior life, and I lead the consultant team in the planning for the new OCCC. I have a brief presentation. Is it okay if I try to share my screen?
Please do.
Oh, host disabled participant screen sharing. Could you please give me permission?
Taryn, if you're on, that's up to you.
Okay, I think I just did it. Try now.
It's working. Perfect. Thank you.
May I have your attention, please?
There it is. Yes, we can see.
There it is. Okay, let's make it a slideshow. Okay, does it look right to everybody? Can
I
everybody?
can see it very well.
There are 4 areas that per the agenda we were asked to address. It's a brief project status. It's a update on the request for interest. It is an update on the community outreach and engagement. And then I will close with next steps. This should take me about 15 minutes. The project is in its second phase. So much of the scope is to gather more information on items identified during the first phase, which means that, for example, we completed our site studies. So all geotechnical borings and the hazardous materials studies of the structures that are scheduled to be demolished have been completed at the site, which, as you know, is the current animal quarantine location in Halawa. We have also developed a business case analysis, BCA for short, and the intent of that analysis is to explore the most appropriate approaches for the delivery and the financing of the new facility. So that study examines development options that also include public-private partnerships, P3 for short, scenarios. And it includes what is known as a value for money analysis. So ultimately, the BCA provides a recommendation to the state on what the best financing model for this particular project would be. So you see a graphic at the bottom of the screen. It shows 4 delivery models. One says, well, shows not to do anything, and there's a cost to not doing anything. The second is design bid build. That's a traditional procurement method, design build. Most of you are very familiar with it. And then lastly, the design build finance maintain option. The business case analysis recommended a P3 with a certain minimum investment by the state. That will be evaluated after the responses to the RFI are received to see if we need to compare anything that is proposed, such as a financing method that right now is cannot be one of the options. So Next slide, project status. We are currently in the final phases of the population forecast. And as it was brought up earlier, I do want to point out that the company that we are working with is Pulitzer Bogart. They are a nationally known expert in the field. And it is my personal opinion that we could not have anybody more qualified to do this population forecast. The future OCCC inmate population forecast was last projected in 2016. So that is 5 years ago. This is done by classification level, and it projects forward to a 10-year period. So the current update of that forecast is in its final stages of review. We are targeting its completion in March. So this is upcoming. So this update will account for changes in the criminal justice system's policies and practices. It examines the trends in the demographics and economic conditions, and it considers pending and proposed legal reforms. I might want to add that all of this is utilizing some, to me, fascinating advanced statistical analysis. Lastly, I want to point out that this forecast is a critical part of our planning work because it ensures that all recent and pending progress to improve our system of rehabilitation is incorporated in the project planning, and then with that, ultimately, its design. So the RFI. An RFI, which is short for Request for Interest, was released on February 12th. Here's why. The pandemic has caused our government to face severe budgetary constraints, and those constraints affect our ability to finance infrastructure projects and programs in the years ahead. So the state of Hawaii is planning several important investments in its education, healthcare, justice, and transportation systems, which necessitated state officials to start seeking ways to allow priority projects to proceed, and at the same time avoiding traditional financing solution that could, as you all know, result in long-term negative effects to the state's debt ceiling and its credit rating. So one of the state's priority projects is the new OCCC. So the information that we hope to receive, will inform and refine our assumptions as well as our expectations in regards to the planning. With that, then the subsequent procurement and the eventual delivery. So the lessons learned from similar developments will also help us to build an understanding of the information that is needed and the preparation that's required to formulate a financing solution that best achieves our particular project goals. The final deadline for the RFI responses is on March 12th. So that will be coming up soon as well. In regards to community outreach and engagement, community involvement continues. It started in 2016 and it has been continuous with that very small interruption due to the pandemic of the IAEA neighborhood board meeting that took a several months break. We've done over 30 team presentations to neighborhood boards, community associations, and others. Some of those were island-wide, and we held 2 town hall meetings. Since 2016, our team has attended every single neighborhood board and community association meeting. We have a dedicated OCCC website with all public outreach materials and related technical reports are posted. So I invite you to please feel free and check out that site and provide feedback. We have just issued our 28th monthly newsletter, which is emailed to over 1,000 stakeholders, officials, agencies, and those members of the public that have asked to be included on this list. Those newsletters provide updates on the project's progress, and it addresses, or they address, community questions. We also publish an outreach calendar that is updated monthly. Next steps. Next steps will include the updates of utility service capacity as well as traffic studies. And then on the program and policy side, part of our process includes a review of the current PSD and OCCC policies and standards. This will help lead to updates for the new facility and account for potential changes. And those include union policies, general programs and outreach, and changes to visitation and court hearings. Some of those triggered by the increased acceptance of technologies. And then next is the update of the functions, the spaces, and the adjacencies that were developed in our phase 1 program. In regards to pre-design and conceptual design, we will refine and further develop the site layout based on the new and updated site and policy information. Given the results of the updated population forecast, as well as some of the program updates, the team will then further develop the design for both the detention center and the pre-design, the pre-release facility. And then lastly, we review logistical issues within the facility, such as coordinating travel of large numbers of pre-release inmates through the work furlough program. Community partnering requires PSD to involve a project host community, in this case, this is IAEA, in the planning of new correctional facilities. It requires to implement a community partnering process to mitigate impacts of developing or expanding a correctional facility. In part of that is developing a community benefit and enhancement package. So that mandate is, you see it up there, HRS 353 16.37. And it is to occur during the RFP process, which is a step we haven't reached yet. Nonetheless, we are taking early steps to be undertaking some of these steps now. That includes work with the community to identify community representatives. We will create a community partnering task force. Community partnering will assist in arranging task force meetings to establish goals, objectives, responsibilities, and schedules. And the task force will determine potential community impacts, you see it here, possible mitigation measures, the pros and the cons of that, potential costs and benefits, challenges to the implementation, and then lastly, the schedule. And that ends my presentation. I'd like to add one sentence. Our goal, this team's goal, and I'd like to believe all of our goals, is to provide a safe, a secure, a healthy, a humane, a social, and a physical environment for all inmates and the staff. We want to provide spaces that are required for intake, processing, short-term incarceration, or the transition of inmates into the community. I think all of us are trying to do this. Thank you for your time. Oh, I have to stop sharing, don't I? Sorry.
Bettina, one thing I would ask, could you forward that presentation to Max and Max can forward it to us to include in our.
Absolutely. Yes, absolutely.
And first of all, commissioners, questions?
I have one. Bettina, you mentioned the favorite approach would be design, build, finance, as I recall.
That the result of the business case analysis was a P3. So that would be, you're correct, a design, build, finance, and maintain.
What's the cost of financing that you project? Assuming 500 million.
Oh gosh, can I get back to you with that exact number? Yes, it is an important.
Yeah, because although it would not, it won't directly impact our bond rating, it would definitely impact the state's ability to balance its operating budget.
That is correct, and
yeah.
I do want to add the RFI that we just issued is looking at innovative financing options to help the state to help alleviate some of the burden, the financial burden that would fall on the state. And we're very open-minded, and we are hopeful that there will be some interesting responses.
Yeah, because I would imagine that financing a package like this would add tens of millions of dollars to the department's operating budget per year.
The overall cost of the project would increase. You are correct.
Right. And so I guess the next question really is for Max. If this proceeds, how would the department propose to get the financing, through an additional appropriation or through some other kinds of adjustments to the department budget? How would this happen?
It will probably have to be looking at additional appropriations in addition to making some reductions within the department. It may be a combination of both. I'm not sure at this time.
Okay. I wanted to ask another set of questions, Martha.
Sure.
Regarding the projections, I know the Pulitzer-Bogart, and they are highly regarded. But what you mentioned, their methodology is pretty advanced. Is that something that you'll be able to share with us?
Oh, definitely. Oh, yes. And we're hoping that we have something that we can share as early as next month.
Okay. Along with that, do you know what assumptions they are proceeding from in making these projections? By assumptions, I mean what assumptions as regards the current practices in the community, assumptions regarding the process by which inmates are programmed and classified within the Department of Public Safety, assumptions regarding the classification system itself and how viable it is. Is that, are you aware of what they are, and is that something you'd be able to share with us?
I would not do it justice by oversimplifying it now. Everything you just mentioned has been considered. This report has combined, I guess I can say, or used tremendous amount of data from various agencies. There are numbers from the judiciary in there. There's a lot of numbers from, obviously, PSD in there. And it projects, it looks at, well, it projects at potential reforms. It is anticipating certain adjustments. Now, I am not a oh goodness, I am not a mathematician. So there are certain ways that numbers can be assigned to this.
Sure.
And we can plan a summary of the results of this report for an upcoming commission meeting. I would be delighted to do that. I appreciate the interest.
Sure.
And,
Yeah, as regards the numbers, I understand. I'm not a statistician myself, but I've read a few population projections in my day. But one of the key points is what the data points are. So do you know off the top of my head if they're using data that was, for example, up to December 31, 2020, or did it stop collecting data as of December 30, 2019? Because
No,
that could make a big difference.
yes, I see where you're going. The pandemic, and the change in the numbers due to the pandemic. The data points are going to, I believe it is July of last year.
Okay.
As Ed said, we're acquainted with Pulitzer Bogard because we've worked with them in the past. In fact, it was Curtis Pulitzer that advised the department as we were developing the capacity study 20 years ago. Ted's points are very, very important. And Bettina, you just mentioned that they're making some adjustments for anticipated changes in maybe policy or statutes. I mean, I would really like an opportunity for the commission to be talking with a representative from Pulitzer Bogard about that. This is very, very important.
Yes, we are excited that we are nearing the end of that process, and I look forward to sharing the results. And it wouldn't be me. It would definitely be somebody that freezes numbers and can answer the very detailed questions.
Martha?
And I'm also concerned that when it comes to community involvement, there seems to be a decision was made to restrict that involvement to the location of where the facility is going to be. And that's why the IAEA board is involved, when in fact the community impact of building a new correctional facility is much broader than that. And I would really like to see other people involved, such as the people who are attending this meeting, the constant inmate advocates, who really do keep track of what's going on, and also the commission. It's not just the locale of the facility, it is the community as a whole that should be included in this.
Yeah,
I appreciate the invitation to this commission meeting here. So thank you.
Yeah, I just want to make a comment. I know Mike's been raring to jump in, but just one comment. I'm very familiar with the community partnering law. It was written at the time when the department was contemplating building a prison on the Big Island. So when they talked about community partnering, they were really thinking about partnering with the Big Island as a whole, not just with the specific site. Because if we, for example, if we did community partnering when we reopened Kulani, there was no community to partner with. So anyway, I think I think Martha's point is OCCC really is a jail for the entire city and county of Honolulu. So anyway, Martha, I think Mike's been trying to ask a question.
Okay, Mike.
Bettina, thank you for being here. You have a standing invitation. You don't need you got an invite, but how much money's been spent so far? The reason I ask it is I worry about the rail and how, that has the train left the station. I don't want to hear later on that, oh my goodness, we should have done it differently, but too much money's been spent, because the model is a very different one than this commission's looking at, given our moratorium. How much money spent thus far, Bettina?
Oh goodness.
Just give me a ballpark. Give me a guesstimate.
We are nearing $10 million. This has been a multi-year effort, and it's, yes.
Okay.
I'd be happy to give a precise number and how it was spent at a future meeting.
Have you been to Norway to see how they run the show?
No, I know my accent is European, and I wish I had been there to see that facility. I have certainly read about it. It has been mentioned numerous times, and
Bob
I haven't.
Thank you again for coming. You are not sticking your head in the lion's den. We invite you. You're part of the community.
I am, and I appreciate you saying that. I am very passionate personally about this project, and I appreciate conversations like these here, because as I mentioned at the end, I think we all want the same thing.
Martha, I think we got to move along here. We're running out of time.
Yes. Are there any other pressing questions to Bettina at this point and to the department at this point?
Well, the only question I have, which I think is pressing, is what is actually for the department. Once you get the responses to the RFI, what next?
I can, you say to the department, so I don't want to step on anybody's toes, but what we're anticipating is that there will be some insightful, there might be some insightful ideas. We are cautiously hopeful to get some ideas that might give us a previously not considered angle in regards to financing.
Right, I get that. But if you get some great ideas, what do you do with the ideas? And I think that's a department question, not a consultant question.
I believe we're gonna take that great idea and try to draft an RFP out of that to get,
So your intent is to proceed with the building of this facility?
I believe so, yes.
Okay, and you're aware of the commission's position that there really needs to be a replanning?
Right.
Okay, just wanted to clarify.
Okay, anything else?
Bob has something.
Martha, if I may, I know your time is short, but a couple of quick questions. Number one is the BCA the financing models, are those public information? And number two, and I think this goes to public safety, over a month ago, the Oversight Commission recommended the creation of an advisory committee to advise the department with respect to this new jail. And I'm wondering, has that recommendation been rejected, or is something going to happen in terms of really engaging the community for the first time in the development of this facility? It's been a month, and I'm just wondering where we stand on that recommendation from the Oversight Commission.
Bob, I'm not aware of this advisory committee that we were supposed to form. Was public safety responsible to form this?
Maybe Ted can speak to that. He drafted the recommendation.
that was part of our recommendation to the legislature. And I forget the exact wording, but we did say that an advisory committee should be formed to take a look at the assumptions and the needs, et cetera, including the need for more services and programs in the community for offenders who perhaps may not be at OCCC, or to keep people released from OCCC from getting rearrested again and put back in OCCC. It was part of our overall recommendation.
Okay.
And
Because
we're still on track with all of that. It's for the RFP stages. So this would be coming up.
Well, actually, our
Would be next
recommendation
step.
was to pause the planning.
I
and
am-
form this commission. So it's, I don't think in my mind at least, you can't decouple the two.
I believe also what, as a commission, we're more interested in is really to have a systems planning. What is happening at police contact, what's happening at filing cases with the judiciary, decisions to put people in jail, through the release process, and what do we have in place? And to be myopic and only look at corrections and what will happen while they're in correctional facilities does not help resolve the entire problem. We're looking at the whole system. That's how we get change to it.
Martha, can you mind if I chime in for 1 second? This is Tommy. Okay, you're absolutely correct. If you look at the criminal justice system as a whole, think about it as an iceberg. At the top, you got parole with about 1,500 convicted felons on parole. From parole down to the waterline, you got about 5,200 inmates and sentence misdemeanors in our facilities. Under the waterline, you have almost 19,000 people on probation. The vast majority are sentenced felony probationers. So if the discussion, if you want to look at the criminal justice system as a whole, everything is fed through public safety by the judiciary. So if you want to look at more community-based programs, bed-based and diversion programs, you get the most bang for your buck by doing it before they come to prison, and work with the judiciary and the legislature to get the programs and services needed so people don't go to prison in the first place. By the time we get them, they're either the felonies are so serious they're sentenced directly to prison, or they've been on probation and failed on probation and resentenced to prison. So just some comments to think about as a system as a whole. If we want to try to stem the tide, it has to start with the judiciary. Thank you.
Again, that's what I was saying. It has to be a systems review. Bob, it's confusing to keep on taking comments from the.
Okay, if just one more, Martha, if I could briefly, one.
Yeah.
Okay.
I get Martha's point, Bob, but I did want to follow up with a follow-up comment to Tommy's comment anyway. I think what we're saying as a commission is that for example, you get a lot of probation violators and parole violators who are incarcerated. The question is why? How do we make these programs more effective so they don't violate? How do we improve our reentry program so to enhance the success on probation or parole? I read recently about how one of the programs that were very promising, the LEAD program with the Honolulu Police Department, is failing because of lack of cooperation from the prosecutor. How does the system foster better cooperation, get everybody on the same page, so a lot of these mentally ill don't have to go to OCCC and can get into appropriate health services instead? I think these are the kinds of questions that we're trying to raise here.
Yes.
Martha, I think it's just one point very quickly. It's an important one, or I wouldn't bother you with it. In the financial analysis, Bettina has talked about considering policies and so forth. What we need to do as part of the policy planning and the financial analysis is to have the people who are able to do this, because we in the community cannot. What would be the cost savings from various policy alternatives? Ted has talked about a number of them. If we do A, B, and C, what would be the cost impact on this new facility? What would be the impact on the population of the projected population of the new OCCC capacity? What would bail reform, if you had complete bail reform, eliminated monetary bail, what would that save, and how many people would we need to build a jail for? The same with the 180, I think 183 people who are parole, whole probation violators who are there. If we found alternative housing for those people, what would be the savings overall? We aren't considering any of these things, and I can't believe that we're $10 million into this plan without looking at those very basic fundamental things. And it's time that we start considering those things, because they're going to impact our community for a generation. And I just can't believe it. Thank you.
I concur with what you're saying. I would presume the agreement that the state has with Bettina's organization concerns the correctional system, and they look at policies as they exist. They look at laws as they exist. So I do not expect their reports to have that type of analysis in it. Is that correct, Bettina?
In short, yes, but we are trying to anticipate.
And are you doing, in that anticipation, are you presenting any cost savings that might be made if these alternatives are implemented?
I have not seen the final report. I can't answer that for sure.
Thank you. Okay, let's move on to the next item on the agenda once I get the agenda back up here. And that again is death reports. And that's requesting an analysis of inmate deaths. And we're aware that some states have deaths on their website, and they also do death analysis. California, very large state with many, many thousands of inmates, are able to do that. So again, I would ask Max, have you considered any of these other jurisdictions, how they do their death reports, how they address HIPAA problems that our state seems to be facing?
Martha, in my email from Max today, he asked me to, God forbid, take a little bit of the lead. So I don't want to put I don't want Max to stick his head in the lion's den yet, maybe later.
Okay, go ahead.
Okay, Max, can I talk a little bit?
Go ahead.
I want to give you my background. First of all, HCR 85 is important to read the report. Bob was the principal author, but a lot of people chimed in, and it talks about restorative justice. It talks about many of the things. But one of the things, when I was at family court as senior judge, I started doing morbidity, mortality reviews, death reviews to assess. Why did I do that? I went to the hospital. I did grand rounds to see, because hospitals, when there's a death, let's say in the ER somewhere, they will look at it, do a 24/7, 365. How do we cure the next person? Doctors understand second opinions. They're not defensive. We judges are very defensive, and sometimes we in corrections are. So I did that hospital thing. We put one in at Child Protective Services does it now. When a child in care or a child put back in the home by the judge, we look at it, say, why did this child die? And we're looking at some of that now, unfortunately, in the paper. And then we're looking at the prisons. I found, if you Google this, it's rich with information. California, Nevada. It's part of a professional thing. I don't think we need statutes. We don't need, it'd be nice to have Deputy Attorney General weigh in, but I think it's really on this commission, and I think it's on Max, and I think it's on parole to figure out what do we learn from the death, the unnecessary death, or even a necessary death? What do we learn so we don't have another one? my own personal bias is that everyone in the world deserves a compassionate, gentle passing. And we know that. And we have family members listening in today that have been through this. So it's really important to learn from that and do not be as myopic. So I've read almost every, I just think this is going to be a line item, Martha. We don't need to solve it today. I think it should keep coming up in our agenda every month, and maybe we should eventually find out from Max if we can collaborate. But this is something I've worked on. I've had a chance to, and it's very hard because these prisoners and their families, they're not widgets on Amazon where you're buying a dozen pens. These are human beings that suffer, and we have a fiduciary duty. Think about that fiduciary duty to, just like children in school, just like CPS placements, to protect them. That may sound simplistic, but I feel very strongly about that. And this is kind of one of my agendas. So I'm just going to make that preliminary statement and invite a critique. Thank you, Martha.
I think what would help is if we had a document that discusses this, Mike. You have a lot of information. If you could put it into a document that we can share beyond the people who attend this meeting, that would be very helpful.
I have sent out what California does in Nevada. I will send it out. I think I sent it to my commissioners. I'm not sure, but thank you. Bob, you have some of this stuff too, don't you?
Yes, I do have some, Mike. Thank you.
So I think a best practice, most states have it, and we need to get one eventually. I'm not going to blame anybody now, but I want to get started on this project so we can learn. And in the military, we do a AAR after action report. What do we learn from it? Thank you.
Bob, I guess he opened the door for you.
No, listen, I really appreciate your giving me so much time, so I will stay quiet. Thank you.
Okay, thanks. Any of the other commissioners comment?
So I think it's up to Max now.
Max?
You know, Judge, simplicity is what I move on. You know, I guess my concern for myself and the department is that, you know, if we do something that's contrary to law and we get sued, just in the language that we provided yesterday, you know, identifying the family member that we released this information to. We've come across numerous cases where there is conflicting information as to who the contact person is, you know, when a person is admitted to the hospital. So imagine if we released the wrong information. I mean, I personally know situations in my personal life where the wife was not the executor of the husband's estate, right? So all of these things need to be sorted out before we actually release information, you know, to the family and the public, because it could be a nightmare for the department if we did so and we gave it to the wrong people. So I'm not against releasing information, but I just need laws in place to protect myself and the department when we do so.
It's beyond just releasing information. It's also making the, Mike, you're on mute.
Not anymore. God forbid. I'm more interested in this fatality review to figure out how do we protect the next person? How do we protect the ACOs, everybody who could get caught up in this? And how do we not, and God forbid again, how do we not have a bunch of lawsuits against public safety? Because when someone dies, it gets everyone's attention, you know, and I've lived through this with CPS, with in hospital situations. So I'm not so much worried about confidentiality. I think confidentiality sometimes is the enemy of safety. Thank you.
Martha, can I just ask whether everybody at OTRIP who's in the system has an advanced care directive? Because that'll solve an awful lot of problems and lawsuits if at the time of admission they execute an advanced care healthcare directive. Tells who, it gives all kinds of information about who to contact, who can make decisions in the event the person becomes incapacitated and so forth. Everybody should have one of those. You have to have one to go into a hospital. When you go into the hospital, you should certainly have one in prison. I don't know if that's standard or not. The files that I've seen on inmates, sometimes they have them, sometimes they don't.
Okay, Max, are you able to answer that?
I think we do have one, but it's not completed a lot of times by the inmates. You know, I know some inmates that I've seen has a do not resuscitate clause in their case file. So I'm not sure if that is what Bob is referring to. But,
Max, offline, I'd be happy to talk to you about this. Maybe we could solve the problem.
Sure.
Thank you.
Okay, any other comments from commissioners?
Martha, I just want to say that we do some type of review after a critical incident, such as a death. You know, security does their review, and a lot of times if it involves a death in healthcare, not so much in a hospital, but if the person dies within the facility, you know, healthcare does a review also, and it's more of a Q&A type of review, and to identify corrective action that's needed.
The advanced care directive, just one thing that I would advise is you said that it's hit and miss whether it might be in the file. And when they have their first medical review, their first meeting with the medical unit, at that point, it should be presented. If they refuse to answer it, that should be written on the form that they refuse to fill this out and put in the file, so you know that at least it was asked.
All right. It's a good recommendation. Thank you.
Okay, anything else from the commissioners? Well, that's the end of our agenda. And are there announcements that anybody would like to make? Otherwise, our next meeting will be the third Thursday in March, which is March 18th at 9 o'clock.
Martha?
Yes?
Carrie Ann, I just want to make the comment that even though that bill specifically to fully fund the Oversight Commission is dead, I would still encourage the commission and all of the people here who are truly concerned about oversight and transparency and accountability to still contact their legislators to support funding the commission, even if there isn't a particular bill. There are ways that they can finagle and move money around, and the Oversight Commission is something that they enacted, they passed, they have a duty to provide the funding. If they can fund $10 million for consultants, they can find the funding for an Oversight Commission that will save lives and actually build a safer community. And just as a community member, I want to say to all of those who are on this meeting, but also to Miss Bettina Mehart, as a community member, I encourage you to travel to Norway, to talk to families who have been impacted by the system. If you were to go into some of these modern day jails and prisons, even outside of Hawaii, people will tell you the same thing. The way that the system is run, it's designed not for people to succeed oftentimes, but for people to be dehumanized and not get the services and treatment that they need. If we're gonna build something, I wanna work with you. Let's work together as a community to build re-entry centers, more housing, substance abuse treatment, education. If we're gonna build, let's invest the 10 million that have already been sunk into this, stop the bleed for jails, stop the already 15 million on MCCC, new jail in Maui. Let's build something that's gonna help our community that follows best practices. But I do believe that the consultants have, with all due respect, I believe that they have a higher responsibility, even within their consultant analysis, to look at best practices and how we can reduce the population, because they're selectively choosing consultants that are going to be using projections that's justifying their contracts. In the EIS, if you take a look at it, I encourage you all to do so. My recollection of the EIS for OCCC is that there's literally less than 2 paragraphs committed to an alternative. EISs require alternatives to building, and it was less than 2 paragraphs. So I just want to respectfully state that I believe that they have a duty to look at alternatives, and that the department, DAGs, our consultants, they are failing the community by failing to do so in a good faith manner. So I hope that we can work together and that we can chart a new course for corrections in Hawaii. And I believe we can, but it takes vision, it takes commitment, and we have to stop doing the same things that we've been doing over and over again. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Carrie Ann. Any of the commissioners have any comments? Okay, with that, I'm going to close this meeting. Thank you all very much for attending. And the interest is there. We just got to make sure in the planning for the facility that we're including the type of people who attend this meeting. Okay, thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you, Martha.
Thank you.